3 months ago, my ex-husband showed up at my doorstep at 11 o'clock at night, mascara-stained tears running down his face, begging me to take him back. The same man who told me I was past my prime and handed me divorce papers on our 38th wedding anniversary. The same man who married a woman 4 years older than our own daughter. I was standing there in my silk robe, my hair still damp from the shower, and I could hear Michael's voice in the background asking if everything was okay. Michael, my boyfriend, my ex-husband's former boss. And I realized something in that moment that made me smile. I wasn't past anything. I was just getting started. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this story really begins. My name is Diane Mitchell, and I'm 62 years old. Not just 62. Not already 62. Simply 62. For most of my adult life, I thought that number would define my worth, my beauty, my relevance. I was wrong about a lot of things back then. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, the youngest of 3 daughters in a middle-class family. My father worked for the Postal Service. My mother was a librarian. They taught me to be practical, to be loyal, to honor commitments. I learned those lessons well, maybe too well. I met Richard when I was 24 years old. He was 26, fresh out of business school, ambitious and charming in that boyish way that made you want to pack his lunch and iron his shirts. We met at a friend's barbecue on a perfect summer afternoon. He told me I had the most beautiful smile he'd ever seen, and I believed him. Why wouldn't I? Back then, I believed everything. We got married 2 years later in a small church ceremony. I wore my mother's altered wedding dress. Richard wore a rented tuxedo that was slightly too big in the shoulders. We honeymooned in Cannon Beach because that's all we could afford, and I remember thinking I was the luckiest woman alive, walking hand in hand with my husband along the shore, the Pacific Ocean roaring beside us like it was celebrating too. I worked as an elementary school teacher for 35 years, 3rd grade, the year when children still think teachers know everything but are old enough to challenge you on it. I loved every exhausting, sticky, crayon-stained minute of it. Richard built his career in commercial real estate, working his way up from sales associate to regional director. We were a team. That's what I thought anyway. We had 2 children. Jennifer came first, then 3 years later, Christopher. I took minimal maternity leave both times because Richard's career was demanding, and we needed my teaching income and benefits. I packed lunches, attended every soccer game and piano recital, helped with homework at the kitchen table while dinner simmered on the stove. Richard worked late most nights, and I told myself that's what ambitious men did. That's what providers did. The years passed the way. Years do when you're busy living them. Birthdays and holidays, graduations and weddings. Jennifer got her nursing degree and married a good man named Thomas. They gave us 2 grandchildren, Emma and Noah. Christopher moved to Seattle for his tech job, visits on major holidays, calls every Sunday evening. We had the life we were supposed to have. The American dream, neatly packaged with a mortgage and a 401k. I won't pretend it was perfect. Richard had affairs. 3 that I knew about. Probably others I didn't. The first one nearly destroyed me. I was 38, still young enough to start over, but the thought terrified me. We had 2 children, a mortgage, intertwined lives. Richard cried and begged and promised it would never happen again. We went to counseling. He bought me a diamond bracelet I never really wanted. We moved forward. The second affair happened when I was 45. This time, I didn't cry as much. I made him sleep in the guest room for 3 months. I thought about divorce more seriously, but couldn't quite pull the trigger. The kids were in high school. I had my teaching, my routines, my book club, my identity as Richard's wife. Who would I be without that? The third affair I discovered when I was 53. By then, I had developed a kind of emotional scar tissue. I confronted him calmly over morning coffee. He didn't even deny it. We had a business-like conversation about expectations and boundaries. I took a solo trip to visit my sister in Arizona. When I came back, we resumed our lives like nothing had happened. I had perfected the art of looking the other way. I'm not proud of staying, but I'm not ashamed of it either. Every woman makes the choices she thinks she can live with. I thought I was being practical, mature, realistic about what marriage looked like after decades together. I thought I was honoring my vows, my commitment, the life we'd built. What I didn't understand was that I was slowly making myself smaller, quieter, more invisible, trying to be the wife who was easy to stay with. I stopped wearing the colors I loved because Richard said they were too bold. I cut my hair shorter because he mentioned once that women our age looked better with practical styles. I apologized for aging as if it were something I was doing to him personally. My 60th birthday came and went with a small dinner party Richard organized. It was nice. Everyone said the right things about 60 being the new 40. I smiled and cut the cake and felt absolutely nothing. Not happiness, not sadness, nothing. Just a vague sense that I was watching my own life from a distance. 2 years passed in that numb fog. I retired from teaching, something I'd been looking forward to for years. Suddenly, I had all this time and no idea what to do with it. Richard was busier than ever, or so he said. He'd joined a new gym, upgraded his wardrobe, started using hair product. I noticed, but didn't comment. What was there to say? Our 38th wedding anniversary fell on a Saturday in October. I planned a nice dinner at home, Richard's favorite meal, pot roast with roasted vegetables, homemade rolls, apple pie for dessert. I set the table with our good china, lit candles, put on the dress I knew he used to love. Blue silk, fitted at the waist. I'd been working out more, eating better. I looked good. I felt almost hopeful. Richard came home at 7, later than I expected. He didn't kiss me hello. He sat down at the table and stared at the candles like they were personally offensive to him. I served the pot roast. He took 3 bites. "Diane, we need to talk." Those 5 words. I knew immediately. The way you know when you touch a hot stove that you're about to feel pain. Not from the words themselves, but from the flatness in his voice, the resignation, the decision already made. I want a divorce. I set down my fork carefully. My hands were steady. That surprised me. "Is there someone else?" "Her name is Brittany. She's 28. We've been seeing each other for 7 months. 28. 4 years older than Jennifer. Young enough to be my granddaughter almost. 7 months. Through my retirement party. Through our grandson Noah's birthday. Through countless dinners where I'd asked how his day was and he'd said fine, and I'd believed him. I need to be honest with you, Diane. His voice took on this apologetic but firm tone, like he was explaining a business decision to a subordinate. You're past your prime. I'm not. I'm 59. I've worked hard my entire life, and I deserve to enjoy these years with someone who's still vital, alive, excited about life. Past my prime. Like I was a cut of meat that had expired, a stock that had peaked and was now in decline. We've had a good run, he continued, pushing his pot roast around his plate. But I need more. Brittany needs me. She looks at me like I'm the most important person in the world. When's the last time you looked at me like that? I wanted to scream that I had looked at him like that for 38 years while he was too busy checking out other women to notice. I wanted to throw the pot roast at his head. I wanted to collapse and sob and beg him to reconsider. Instead, I stood up, walked to his side of the table, and dumped his plate into his lap. The pot roast, the vegetables, the gravy, all of it, right onto his expensive slacks. "Get out of my house," I said. "It's our house, Diane. Let's be reasonable." "Get out." He left. The pot roast stain on the dining room chair stayed, a perfect circle of grease and betrayal. I tried to clean it the next day but couldn't get it all out. Eventually, I threw the whole chair away, some stains you don't want to keep looking at. Richard moved in with Brittany 3 days later. She had an apartment downtown, the kind of trendy loft with exposed brick and industrial lighting that young people think is sophisticated. Our children were devastated. Jennifer stopped speaking to her father for 2 months. Christopher called him once, had a tense 15-minute conversation, and hung up angrier than I'd ever heard him. "How could he do this to you, Mom?" Jennifer asked me over coffee, her eyes red from crying. "After everything you've been through together?" I didn't have an answer. How could I explain that maybe the problem was everything we'd been through together? that maybe I'd been so busy being understanding, forgiving, accommodating that I'd forgotten to ask if I deserved better. Richard wanted me to make the divorce easy. He actually said that. "Let's handle this like adults, Diane. Let's not drag lawyers into it and make things messy." What he meant was, let's split things quickly and quietly so I can marry Brittany without complications, and you can disappear into whatever life past your prime women are supposed to have. I hired Catherine Morgan, the toughest divorce attorney in Portland. She was 58 years old with silver hair she wore in a sharp bob and a reputation for destroying unfaithful husbands in court. Our first meeting lasted 2 hours. "Here's what we're going to do," Catherine said, spreading documents across her desk. "Oregon is an equitable distribution state. You were married 38 years. You contributed to every asset acquisition, even if your name isn't on everything. You supported his career while raising your children. You're entitled to half of everything, plus alimony, plus a portion of his pension and retirement accounts." "He won't agree to that," I said. Catherine smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "He doesn't have to agree. Let me handle Richard." The divorce took 8 months to finalize. 8 months of paperwork, depositions, financial disclosures, and Richard's increasingly desperate attempts to negotiate. He'd underestimated what 3 decades of marriage entitled me to. The house was in both our names, purchased when I was 30. My teacher's pension was modest but secure. His 401k and pension from 33 years in commercial real estate were substantial. In the end, I got the house, free and clear. Richard had to buy out my share of his pension and retirement accounts. I got 60% of our combined liquid assets. I got alimony, a significant monthly amount, until either of us died or I remarried. I got the cars, both of them, because why not? I got the vacation cabin in Bend we'd owned for 15 years. Catherine got everything she possibly could, and Richard signed the papers with a look on his face, like he was signing his own death warrant. "You're destroying me," he said at the final meeting, sitting across from me in the lawyer's office. "No," I replied calmly. "I'm taking what I earned." The first few months after the divorce were finalized were strange. I walked through the house, my house now, touching things that had always been ours and trying to understand that they were just mine. The silence was profound. No one to cook for. No one scheduled to accommodate. No one watching TV too loud in the living room or leaving the toilet seat up. Jennifer worried about me. She called every day, sometimes twice. "Mom, are you eating? Are you sleeping? Do you want me to come over?" "I'm fine, honey," I told her. And strangely, I was. Not happy, not yet, but fine, stable, present. I started small. I painted the bedroom walls a soft lavender. Richard had always hated purple, said it was an old lady color. I bought new sheets, cream-colored with a high thread count that felt like butter against my skin. I rearranged the furniture, moving the bed to face the window so I could wake up to morning light. I joined a gym, not the fancy one Richard had gone to, but a community center near my house that offered classes for seniors, yoga, water aerobics, strength training. I met women there, other divorcees, widows, women who had stories carved into their faces like mine. We didn't talk about being past our prime. We talked about being strong, flexible, capable. I let my hair grow out a little, added some highlights. Not to look younger, but to look like myself, whoever that was. I bought clothes in colors I'd denied myself for years. Coral, turquoise, deep red. I threw away the beige cardigans and shapeless slacks that had made up my wardrobe. 6 months after the divorce, I went to a fundraising gala for the school district. They'd asked me to attend as a retired teacher who'd made significant contributions. I almost didn't go. What was the point? But Jennifer insisted, helped me pick out a dress, did my makeup. The dress was emerald green, sleeveless, fitted but not tight, hitting just above my knees. I felt ridiculous driving there, overdressed for my own life. But when I walked into the ballroom and saw people's reactions, something shifted. Heads turned. People smiled. One of my former colleagues grabbed my arm and said, "Diane, you look absolutely stunning." I felt stunning. Not for my age, not for someone who'd been through hell, just stunning. Period. That's where I met Michael Hendricks. He was standing by the bar, tall and distinguished, silver-haired with these clear blue eyes and laugh lines that suggested he smiled often. He was the keynote speaker, I learned later, a retired architect who designed 3 of the district's new schools and was being honored for his pro bono work. He approached me during cocktail hour. "I hope this doesn't sound like a line," he said, "but you have the most genuine smile I've seen all evening. Everyone else looks like they're here because they have to be." "I almost didn't come," I admitted. "I'm recently divorced, and I'm still figuring out how to be in public without feeling like I have a sign on my forehead that says rejected." He laughed, a rich sound that made me want to hear it again. "I've been divorced for 12 years, and I can tell you the sign goes away. Eventually. Though I still check my forehead every morning just to be sure." We talked for 2 hours about architecture and teaching, about our grown children and grandchildren, about Portland's changing landscape, and the ridiculous cost of good coffee. He was 67, had 3 adult children, was an avid hiker and terrible golfer. He made me laugh in a way I hadn't laughed in years, the kind of laughter that comes from your belly and leaves you breathless. When the evening ended, he asked for my number. Not in a creepy way, not with any pressure, just a simple, "I'd really like to take you to dinner sometime if you're interested." I was interested. Terrified, but interested. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant. He brought me flowers, purple irises, without knowing they were my favorite. We talked through dinner, then over coffee, then in his car in my driveway for another hour because neither of us wanted the evening to end. He kissed me goodnight, gentle and respectful, and I floated into my house like a teenager. The second date was a hike at Forest Park. The third was a concert at the Oregon Symphony. By the fourth date, I learned something interesting about Michael Hendricks. He wasn't just a retired architect. He'd spent the last 15 years of his career as the regional director of Saunders and Klein Architecture, Richard's firm. Richard's boss until Michael's retirement 3 years ago. "Did you know?" I asked him directly, needing to understand. "When you met me, did you know who my ex-husband was?" Michael looked uncomfortable for the first time since I'd met him. "Not at first, but I put it together on our second date when you mentioned his name. I should have told you immediately, and I'm sorry I didn't. I wasn't sure how to bring it up without making things awkward." "Did you know about Brittany? About what he did?" "I knew Richard was having an affair, yes. I didn't know the details, and I certainly didn't know how he'd ended things with you. For what it's worth, I never respected him much as a man, even if he was competent at his job. He was arrogant, cut corners, took credit for other people's work." Michael reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm not dating you to get back at Richard or to make some kind of statement. I'm dating you because you're intelligent, funny, beautiful, and you make me want to be a better version of myself. But if this is too complicated, I understand." I thought about it. Really thought about it. Was I dating Michael for the right reasons? Was this revenge or genuine connection? And did it matter if it was both? "I want to keep seeing you," I said finally, not because of who you used to work with, but in spite of it. That was 7 months ago. Being with Michael taught me things I hadn't known I'd forgotten. That someone could listen to me talk about my day without checking their phone. That a man could cook dinner without expecting praise for basic competency. That intimacy wasn't just about sex, though that surprised me too. I'd assumed that part of my life was over, that my body was past being desired that way. Michael proved me wrong, not with empty flattery or forced enthusiasm, but with genuine appreciation. He traced the lines on my face like they were road maps to somewhere interesting. He kissed the loose skin on my arms, the stretch marks on my stomach from carrying 2 children. "You're beautiful," he'd say, and I'd believe him because he said it when I was wearing sweatpants with no makeup, not just when I was dressed up for dinner. We took trips, weekend getaways to the coast, a 2-week road trip through Montana, a cruise to Alaska to see the glaciers before they melted. I discovered I loved traveling without having to plan every detail around someone else's schedule. Michael and I were partners in adventure, equally comfortable with spontaneity and routine. My children adored him. Jennifer invited us both to Sunday dinner and watched with barely concealed delight as Michael helped clear the table and played board games with Emma and Noah. Christopher flew in for Thanksgiving and pulled me aside to say, "Mom, I haven't seen you this happy in forever. Is it real?" "It's real," I said. And it was. I also discovered parts of myself I'd buried. I started taking art classes, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. I was terrible at first, my still life paintings looking like a child's interpretation of fruit, but I got better. I found I had an eye for color, for composition. My instructor, a woman in her 70s with paint permanently under her fingernails, told me I was a natural. I volunteered at the local library reading to children twice a week. I joined a book club, not the one I'd belonged to during my marriage, but a new one where we read challenging literature and argued passionately about themes and characters. I had opinions, strong ones, and people listened. I was 63 years old and I was just figuring out who Diane Mitchell actually was when she wasn't trying to be the wife Richard needed. Meanwhile, Richard's new life wasn't going as planned. I heard about it through the grapevine. Portland's a big city, but certain circles overlap. Jennifer reluctantly shared updates, guilty about being caught between parents but unable to help herself. Christopher was less diplomatic, actively enjoying his father's downfall. Richard had married Brittany 4 months after our divorce was finalized. A big wedding, expensive, at a vineyard outside the city. Jennifer refused to attend. Christopher sent a card with no money in it. I bought myself a spa day that weekend and didn't think about it at all, which felt like its own small victory. The marriage lasted less than a year. Brittany, it turned out, had expensive tastes and no concept of budget. She quit her job as a dental hygienist 3 months after the wedding, declaring she shouldn't have to work when she had a husband. She wanted a bigger house, a newer car, designer handbags, exotic vacations. Richard, who just paid out a significant divorce settlement, didn't have the liquid assets to support that lifestyle. They fought, constantly, according to mutual acquaintances. Brittany wanted to go clubbing and dancing. Richard wanted to watch television and go to bed at a reasonable hour. She wanted excitement and spontaneity. He wanted routine and predictability. Turns out, being in your late 50s and being married to someone in their 20s creates certain fundamental incompatibilities. Who knew? Richard also discovered that his career had taken a hit. The divorce had made waves in his professional circles. His reputation as a family man, someone solid and reliable, had been replaced with whispers about midlife crisis and poor judgment. Clients didn't want to work with someone who'd blown up his life so publicly. His income dropped. When Brittany filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and seeking alimony, Richard became the poster child for his own cautionary tale. But the real unraveling happened at work. Richard had assumed that with Michael retired, he'd be promoted to regional director. It made sense. He had seniority, experience, connections. But Saunders and Klein Architecture promoted someone else. A woman, actually. 15 years younger than Richard, but infinitely more competent. Richard complained to anyone who'd listen about being passed over. He became bitter, angry, difficult to work with. His performance reviews started reflecting it. He was given a warning, then a final warning. 6 months after Brittany left him, Richard was fired. Not for incompetence exactly, but for creating a hostile work environment, for refusing to adapt to new protocols, for clinging to old ways of doing business that no longer worked, for being, as his termination letter apparently stated, resistant to growth and change. I didn't celebrate when I heard about his firing, but I didn't feel sorry for him either, which brings me back to that night 3 months ago. Richard showing up at my doorstep at 11 o'clock, mascara running down his face. I almost didn't answer the door. I was in bed reading a mystery novel Michael had recommended. I heard the doorbell, saw through the window who it was, and considered ignoring it. But curiosity won. "Diane," he said when I opened the door. His face was a mess. He'd been crying, that much was obvious. He was wearing wrinkled clothes, his hair unwashed, his eyes desperate. "Diane, please. I need to talk to you." "It's late, Richard." "I know. I'm sorry. I didn't know where else to go." Michael appeared behind me, putting a protective hand on my shoulder. He was in his pajama pants and t-shirt, his hair adorably rumpled from sleep. "Everything okay here?" Richard's face went through several expressions in quick succession: shock, recognition, anger, defeat. "Michael, you and Diane are together," I said calmly. "Yes, Michael and I have been dating for several months." "But he was my boss. He's wonderful," I finished. "He's wonderful. Now, Richard, what do you want?" Richard's face crumpled, actual tears now streaming down his face. "I made a mistake, the biggest mistake of my life. I was stupid, Diane. I was scared of getting older, of becoming irrelevant, and I thought Brittany would make me feel young again. But she didn't. She made me feel old and tired and foolish. You were the one, Diane. You were always the one. I threw away 38 years for nothing. I should have felt vindicated, triumphant. This was the moment every betrayed wife dreams about, isn't it? The cheating husband realizing what he's lost and begging for another chance. Instead, I felt nothing. Not pity, not anger, not even satisfaction. Just a mild fatigue at having to deal with this man's emotions after so many years of being done with them. You need to leave, Richard. Please, Diane. I'm begging you to consider taking me back. We can start over. I'll do better. I'll be better. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever you need. Just please, give me another chance." "No." He blinked, like he couldn't process such a simple answer. "But we were married for almost 40 years. That has to mean something." "It does mean something," I said. "It means I gave you 40 years, 3 second chances, and countless opportunities to value what you had. You called me past my prime, Richard. You said I wasn't vital or alive or excited about life. You know what? You were right. I wasn't. Not with you." "But I was wrong," he insisted, his voice rising. "You're not past your prime. You look amazing. You're glowing." "I was an idiot." "Yes, you were." I glanced back at Michael, who was watching quietly, ready to intervene if needed, but letting me handle this. "But the thing is, Richard, I didn't become not past my prime for you. I became this version of myself without you, because of leaving you. Do you understand the difference?" "I've lost everything," he said, and now he was really sobbing. "My job, my wife, my house, my money. I'm living in a studio apartment. I had to sell my car. Jennifer won't speak to me. Christopher only calls to lecture me. I'm alone, Diane. Completely alone." "That sounds hard," I said, and meant it. Not because I wanted to help him, but because I could acknowledge someone's pain without taking responsibility for fixing it. "But it's not my problem to solve. You made your choices. These are the consequences." "How can you be so cold?" The tears were stopping now, replaced by anger. "After everything we went through together? After all those years?" "I'm not cold, Richard. I'm finally warm. I'm happy. Genuinely, truly happy in a way I never was with you, even in the good years. And I'm not giving that up to rescue you from problems you created. It's him, isn't it?" Richard glared at Michael. "You were always bitter that I was successful. You always resented me, so you stole my wife." Michael laughed, actually laughed. "Richard, I didn't steal anything. Your wife became available, and I was lucky enough to meet her when she was ready to be appreciated. That's not theft. That's just timing." "You're dating my boss," Richard said to me, accusation in every word. "Ex-boss," I corrected. "And I'm not dating him to hurt you. I'm dating him because he's kind, intelligent, funny, and treats me like I'm the most important person in his world. Everything you stopped doing about 20 years ago." Richard stood there, swaying slightly, looking between me and Michael like he was trying to figure out how his life had ended up here. Finally, he said, "I hope you're happy together." He didn't mean it. It was bitter and sarcastic and small, but I chose to take it at face value. "Thank you, Richard. I am. I hope you find your way to happiness, too. Really. But it won't be with me." He left, shuffled down the driveway to a car I didn't recognize, probably borrowed. Michael and I watched him drive away, then closed the door and locked it. "You okay?" Michael asked. "I'm perfect," I said. And I was. That was 3 months ago. Richard hasn't been back. I heard through Jennifer that he moved to Seattle to be closer to Christopher, though whether Christopher wanted that proximity is debatable. He's working in sales at a small real estate firm, rebuilding his life from scratch. I genuinely hope he finds some measure of peace and perspective. I don't wish him harm. I just don't wish him anything anymore. Michael and I are talking about moving in together, not rushing but exploring the idea. Maybe his place, maybe mine, maybe somewhere new that's ours from the start. We're planning a trip to Italy in the spring. I've always wanted to see Rome, Florence, the Amalfi Coast. Michael speaks passable Italian and promises to be an excellent tour guide. I paint every Tuesday afternoon now. My art instructor says I'm ready to show my work in a local gallery exhibition next month. I'm terrified and excited in equal measure. I'm also mentoring 2 young teachers at my old school, sharing what I learned from 35 years in the classroom. Turns out, you're never past your prime for passing on wisdom. Yesterday, I ran into an old friend from my married days, someone I hadn't seen since before the divorce. She grabbed my hands and said, "Diane, you look incredible. What's your secret?" I almost laughed. What's my secret? Decades of making myself small for a man who didn't appreciate it, a devastating betrayal, a painful divorce, and the slow, difficult process of figuring out who I am when I'm not defined by someone else's opinion of me. That's the secret? But instead, I just smiled and said, I stopped apologizing for taking up space. Because here's what I know now at 63 that I didn't know at 62. There's no such thing as past your prime. There are only people who haven't figured out that life isn't about peaking and declining. It's about evolving, changing, discovering new versions of yourself that you didn't know existed. I'm not the same woman I was a year and a half ago. I'm stronger, happier, more myself. I wear colors that make me feel alive. I laugh louder. I take up more space, literally and metaphorically. I have opinions and I share them. I have desires and I pursue them. I have boundaries and I enforce them. Richard was right about one thing. I am vital and alive and excited about life now. He just couldn't see that the problem wasn't my capacity for those things. It was that I couldn't access them while trying to be the woman he wanted. Some people might look at my story and see revenge, dating my ex-husband's former boss, building a beautiful life while his falls apart, refusing to take him back when he begged. Maybe there's an element of that. I'm human. There's satisfaction in proving someone wrong who hurt you. But mostly this story is about a woman who got a second chance at life and decided to take it, who learned that the number on your birthday cake doesn't determine your worth or your potential, who discovered that sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is someone leaving, because it creates space for you to find yourself. I'm 63 years old, not past my prime, not starting over, just continuing a journey that got a lot more interesting when I decided to take the driver's seat. And that really is the whole story.